Hey there, YouTube. It's Kurt here. Today, I'm going to talk about card advantage and how much it means to Yu-Gi-Oh! And recently, I've been playing around with my own personal builds of my favorite decks, and one thing that I feel like very recently, this idea has been shoved into my brain over and over again, just from playtesting, is that cards that get you the most advantage tend to win you the most games. And now let me elaborate this. And I'm going to use I'm going to use good old reliable here. I'm going to talk about my train build. And I know this deck has always run into problems, and that's what I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! You can just keep on improving the build slowly, time and time again, until you find something that, like, wow, this really flows. This really covers up a lot of the weaknesses of the deck. And I'm going to talk about specifically what adding just a few advantage cards can do. So I'm going to talk about use Doug Zeef as a reference here. He used Lost Wind. He likes to use Lost Wind in his Ultra Geist deck because it tends to be two negates for the price of one card. And while you might not think Lost Wind is that great of a card, in Ultra Geist especially, it probably is a really, really solid choice because you do get that recursion with the card, and monster negates overall are just really, really good in general if you're playing a control strategy. Well, they're good in the game in general. Now, what I found is, like, I in my train build, I decided to add 3 copies of Gizmek. Now, why I decided to do this is because one, the my deck runs into like 2 problems. One is resource management and recursion, and the other one is, well, yeah, basically, I guess that's the main 2: resource management and recursion, and and card advantage. But the thing is, what makes Gizmek so great in this build in my recent tests is that it's just the pure versatility of the cards without contrasting much with what I'm trying to do. Now, if I banish a few cards off the top of my deck, it's really not that big of a deal, especially if I'm running a bigger build, which I have been because for me the bigger build has been working a lot more, and I'll do a video about that. But why this card is powerful? It doesn't conflict with my cards. I can either link it away with a Cleafort Genius, or I can do other things like I can link it away, of course, but also I can pitch it as the cost of my field spell. A lot of times I really, really feel the cost of that field spell. If I open up Gizmek and the field spell, all of a sudden I have inherent +1 because Gizmek doesn't mind going to the grave. And this just shows you the advantage of sometimes you can have something that you wouldn't think fits your archetype that well, but weirdly fits in just because of the overall versatility it brings you to the deck. Also, this card can be summoned on the opponent's turn. So, say I'm playing something like I'm playing what's the deck Necros. Say I'm playing Necros, and they search for their Vanity's Emptiness off of their Benten. Well, this is why this card is amazing, because if I know they're going to summon that Vanity's Emptiness, I have this in card. I just summon it to the field, and then I can just either run over the Vanities or just destroy it with Gizmek's effect on the next turn. And that is just so freaking amazing. And even if they negate it somehow or send it to the grave, it's just there. They cannot get rid of it unless they use another resource which is called by the grave, or any other card, or like DD Crow, something of that nature. And that's why this card has been so powerful in this deck. Now I'll use another example. Also, Gizmek doesn't contrast with the machine restrictions that come off of Urgent Schedule. So just having a machine build, I think this actually might work really well in Cyber Dragons as well. Quite possibly. Cyber Dragon players, give it a try if you watch this video, even though not a lot of people watch my videos, whatever. Now I'll talk about, since the format is moving in more towards a control-friendly style, let's talk about something like Galaxy Cyclone. Galaxy Cyclone is an inherent 2-for-1. It may take you a whole turn to use the second effect, and I think that's why a lot of players think it's bad. But really, if the game is slowing down in general, which it seems to be, why is that much of a cost? Chances are, if you're playing True Draco, or if you're playing against Subterror, you are probably going to do 2 or 3 turns anyway, especially if they're going first. And that's the advantage of a Galaxy Cyclone. They might have a Floodgate, a no-cost Floodgate, like TC Boo, there can be only one, and you might just have to take care of that and a Solemn Judgment that's sitting in the back row. So just having an inherent 2-for-1 is just insanely good without having the cost of having a pitch from your twin twisters, especially if you're playing a strategy like I am. So what I've noticed is that Because especially since decks are very, very grindy nowadays, you have to probably think about card advantage and overall board control much more than you did before. And that's where if you're playing a rogue strategy, these types of cards are going to help you a lot more. So it's okay to be creative. It's okay to try to incorporate things that you wouldn't necessarily that people wouldn't normally think of into your strategies if they cover up your deck's weaknesses in a way, and especially if they help you win that grinding matchup and you perform the same utility that other cards do. Galaxy Cyclone is one of the Galaxy Cyclone is basically a Twin Twisters. Basically, I mean, it doesn't give you quite the nuking power that Twin Twisters gives you, but now since Solid Judgment is at 3, well, they really have to be choosy. Not only is it a 2-for-1 with no discard cost, they have to be choosy when they actually flip up that judgment. If it's only one card, they're probably not going to flip up that judgment because they know Galaxy Cyclone is there. So I actually recommend, I recommend sideboarding that heavily, and plus, it does take care of Mystic Mind as well, which is pretty good. But yeah, that's what I have about that. Now, as far as decks that do this inherently, a lot of decks, of course, generate advantage inherently, and that's kind of what makes them unfair. Like, last format, Sky Striker was unfair just because of its advantage, and plus it's really, really powerful cards. Like, Widow Anchor was an insanely powerful card. We know that it was just too much. It was just too much. And, well, that's one of the reasons why those decks will win. Now, we can think of some decks, and I believe Doug Zeef did a video about this, that gain tons of advantage, but don't actually win you games because the cards themselves aren't that powerful. And I guess there's always a balance there. But hopefully, I think this is a good point. This is just a good point to end on. Ultimately, the formats will change, but your ideas of resource conservation will always be there. One last point. I know I'm scatterbrained here, but like let's take Salamangreat. Now, even Jesse Cotton was like, Ash Blossom isn't as great as it used to be, maybe just because everything can recover from Ash Blossom or it'll be called bad. But he plays it in Salamangreat, and that's just because Salamangreat can pretty much bring it back every single turn, which is kind of broken. But that really does come to play if you can keep pulling back that Ash Blossom and keep making your opponent essentially go negative because of that. Well, that is essentially really busted, but that will be the turning point that will win you a lot more games, in general speaking. And a lot of games will go to 3 games. If you go to a competitive scene, a lot of matches will go to 3 games. And these are the little things that end up pulling you through and getting you to top cut. And yeah, especially in time. If you manage your resources wisely in games 2, you might not have to worry about game 3 as much. These all are contributing factors that will probably help you top if you're at your next regional. So let me know what you guys think of that. Hopefully this was a helpful video, and it's been awesome. See you guys.